We're going across now exclusively to the woman literally in the hot seat, the Chief of the State Bank of India, Arundhati Bhattacharya. Thank you for your time, ma'am. Let me start by asking you the overall situation. Would you say there is now less panic, that we have a certain amount of grip over the situation? Give us a sense of the overall picture in terms of whether withdrawals are still taking place more than is necessary, that is putting an intense strain on the banking system, or do you believe it's a little bit more under control now?
I think it's much more under control now. In many of the states, we have found that the queues have actually come down. In Mumbai itself, in the branch in our corporate center premises, which till yesterday we had, not yesterday, day before, we had queues stretching right up to the pavement. When I arrived today morning, there was hardly a queue here. Even the other branches that I saw on the way in respect of other banks as well as our banks had reasonable queues. However, this is not true in every state. I'm told that in places like Delhi, in places like Calcutta, in places like Bangalore, there seem to be pretty large numbers and queues. One reason, of course, could be that in Delhi and Calcutta, these are places which were closed yesterday, and therefore there is an additional crowd today. But I think overall, if you look at it, the number of transactions are coming down. There seems to be more comfort. Many more of our ATMs are working, though the ATMs are still running dry very quickly because they are only stacked with 100 rupee notes. But currently, at least 438 of our ATMs have been recalibrated for the 200 rupee notes. 73 as of the last half hour were dispensing 2000 rupee notes. So to that extent, you know, the ATM infrastructure is also coming up. And now once this rollout has happened, the speed at which it will start coming up will definitely go up.
But ma'am, I would imagine that the major pressure for the banks right now, in particular for the SBI, is that people are withdrawing more money than is strictly necessary. So give us a sense in numbers. Typically, how much money would be withdrawn, let's say, in a week, and what have you seen since this demonetization was announced by the Prime Minister?
Actually speaking, withdrawals have not really been that very much. In fact, in the first 6 days, that is till yesterday, the withdrawals were 12,000 crores as opposed to deposits of 86,000 crores. So it's not as though, you know, withdrawals are very high. Of course, one of the reasons is that the pipe for withdrawals is narrow, while that for deposits is much wider. When you start actually increasing the amount of withdrawals allowed, especially for corporates, you will see the withdrawal numbers going up. But at this point of time, actually, we are not under pressure from withdrawals. It is only people who are coming in for exchange where there is still quite a bit of crowding.
But, you know, the fact is that there now is an announcement by the government today of indelible ink. There was obviously a sense that in these cash exchanges, there was a certain degree of misuse already happening, that people were sending in their representatives and using these cash swaps at more than one bank. Do you believe this indelible ink will help ease the pressure and contain the misuse?
Yes, I think it will contain the misuse, because we are quite sure the same person was coming with not only different IDs, but then going to different banks. So you'd have the same person first producing an Aadhaar card, then the PAN card would be produced, then the voter ID would be produced. So different kinds of identifications were being produced by the same person, and the system can catch the identification number. But we don't go by names, because very often it's very difficult to get the spelling of the names right. So to that extent, yes, there was misuse happening. We also know that people were going from the counter of one bank to the counter of other banks. So I think the use of the indelible ink will definitely stop this misuse.
There's also been an apprehension, ma'am, that the Jandhan accounts are being misused. The government's had to announce today that don't let your Jandhan accounts be used by other people. How do we get around this problem, that people will simply use the Jandhan accounts to launder their black money into white?
See, from the BC channel, Business Correspondent channel, which is the channel that most Jandhan account holders use, that is already very controlled, because we don't accept third-party remittances into these accounts. The second thing is we take biometric in order to have them deposit into the accounts. In the BC channel also, because the BC cannot keep a lot of money, the amount of deposit is restricted to 2,000 rupees. However, we now find that people from having Jandhan accounts are coming into the branches and depositing larger sums. So obviously now our people are questioning them as to whether this is their money, and then only taking it into the accounts. Further, we are also telling them that if they are putting in so much of money at any point of time, then they need to have full KYC for the account. It cannot be simplified KYC with which the account was originally opened. But this is a matter that we are looking at internally to see how abuse can be stopped. There is no consensus on this as yet. However, we are trying our level best to make the people understand, to educate the people that the money that they put in should necessarily be their own money.
What is the biggest struggle for the banks at the moment? One, of course, is the sheer pressure, the volume of people at the lines to either deposit, withdraw or exchange. But beyond the sheer pressure on bank employees, who are really the heroes of the moment, in terms of managing and containing the aftermath of this demonetization, what is the single biggest struggle or challenge for you?
Now, the single biggest challenge today is to get all the ATM network up and running as quickly as possible. You will find as soon as the ATMs stop running dry and you are getting 2,500 notes from them, normality will be restored. It is not restored because people are going to the ATMs and finding cash not there, and therefore they are assuming that there is no cash in the system. It is not that cash is not there in the system, it is a logistical issue. An ATM cannot contain in one cassette more than 2,500 notes. Each cassette is configured for a different currency. So therefore only one cassette is there for 100, or maximum 2 cassettes are there for 100. And therefore a very few people drawing 20 notes of 100 each, the ATM runs dry very quickly. If it's an on-site ATM, we are repeatedly filling it up. But if it's an off-site ATM, we have to have cash vans doing the rounds in order to fill it up, which is again a logistical nightmare, because frankly we had enough people and vans to do one round per day, which used to be sufficient. But now you have to do several rounds, which is not possible. And that is why there is this panic amongst people. The moment the ATMs stop running dry, people are able to draw freely from them, you will find that the panic will totally subside.
But you know, when you say it's a logistical nightmare, and we do understand, and the biggest challenge is that the ATMs are running dry. On the other hand, you have the Supreme Court not ordering today, but asking why the withdrawal limit should not be increased, saying that maybe that would be a way to ease the distress among ordinary people. Would you agree? Can the withdrawal limit be increased given the logistical problems right now?
See, withdrawal from the ATM, until and unless this 2,500 comes into play, increasing the withdrawal limit would not help, because then even fewer people would get actually serviced by one ATM. So I think a little patience, maybe another 5 days of patience, so that we can get the 500 rupees and load it, and the 2,000 also and load it. As I said, you know, the recalibration is on and a war footing, and it will get more and more speeded up as the time goes on, as people get used to how to do things. So once that is done, I don't think there will be an issue. As it is, from the counters already, the corporates have been allowed now to withdraw 50,000, and people also have been allowed to take a one-time amount of 24,000 instead of having to come 2 times. That has already eased the matter. I think, you know, if you actually go across very many other cities, I have already told you about my own experience in Mumbai, but if you go to cities like Ahmedabad, if you go to many other places, I think already the amount of comfort that people are feeling is quite palpable. The panic is not there. As I said, it is still there in a few cities, maybe with large migrant populations. Those are cities that are still experiencing this, because a lot of people are still coming from exchange of notes. But I don't think the withdrawal issue is posing that much of a huge problem. However, definitely, you know, the more you allow the withdrawal to happen, the greater will be the comfort of the people. There is no gainsaying that.
But you don't think it's practical right now? You think it needs a little bit more time before the withdrawal limit can be increased?
I think so. I think so, because frankly speaking, even if the withdrawal limit is enhanced, we'll be able to give mainly 2,000 rupee notes. Now that is not going to comfort people. They really want the 500 rupee notes.
Exactly.
Now the 500 rupee notes have just started coming. We received quite a bit of 500 rupee note in Mumbai today. So once that supply gets restored, and I can tell you that supply is going to get restored. So once that gets restored properly, thereafter increasing of the withdrawal limit is not a problem at all.
Ma'am, I want to quote to you.
Even today we can withdraw.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Complete your point. Complete your point.
No, I said even today they can increase it, but the only thing is it will be done in 2000 rupees.
Yes, I see your point, but you know, in April of this year, the SBI's chief economist Soumya Kanti Ghosh had a report which actually spoke about how there was already panic among people about a possible demonetization. It's quite interesting now. The report was quite prescient, perhaps without realizing it. But one of the things that your own economist report said in April of this year, it said, and let me read this out to you, the report warns that if demonetization is being contemplated, a roadmap needs to be created. The exact quote says it needs to be done in steps and be balanced with the creation of necessarily electronic and digital infrastructure in the country. This is the SBI's chief economist in April of this year. Do you accept the criticism that while the policy is bold, the implementation as suggested by your own report could have been different?
Frankly, the chief economist is quite independent of me. He doesn't write what I want him to write.
That's a good thing.
That's the only way
that
his reports are properly balanced.
That's a good thing. But
yeah,
do you
he's
agree?
Totally independent.
But do you agree with him?
Having said that, having said that, what I would like to say is, a step of this nature, an action of this nature, has to be necessarily kept secret. Now, if you get everybody in on the whole thing, and then try to do this step, then the efficacy of the same will not be quite what you want it to be. And therefore, I think, the kind of secrecy that was maintained was important. However, having said that, you must understand that the government has been working on some kind of a roadmap, in the sense that PMJDY was put in place because of this, in the sense that every single account was carded so that people could actually use card instead of cash. In the sense that the government has actually given, a lot of impetus to things like wallets, to things like your payment banks. They have given impetus to DBT, which also again ensures that the people actually have accounts and learn how to use them without going into cash. So, there has been quite a lot of thought and preparation. Obviously, we didn't know about it, but the government, whoever was considering it, obviously had some roadmap in mind. Otherwise, the number of accounts in the country for the financially excluded people, so to speak, would not have gone up so much. And today, mind you, if these Jandhan accounts, we have about 10 crores of FI accounts. That is your financially, the weaker segment accounts. Okay, financial inclusion accounts as they are called.
Yeah.
And in that, when we started opening them, they were 97% zero balance. As of last quarter, they had 1033 rupees average balance, which is not bad. The amount of people who have actually started putting cash in the account and using this account has really gone up quite a bit.
But yet there were about, correct me if I'm wrong, I think about 40% that still remains zero balance in the Jandhan accounts?
Not 40%, it has come down, I think we are at around 34%.
Okay, but what I'm hearing you say is that therefore this is not some abrupt decision by the government, that the push to banking inclusion, the push to the Jandhan scheme was somewhere at the top levels of the government. This was a long time in preparation. This is not some overnight abrupt decision. That's actually what I'm hearing you say.
I think so. That is my feel. I don't really know the truth. You can ask the government about that, but I think, it must have been properly thought through for quite some time.
Ma'am, I want to bring you back to the RBI order, a copy of which is now before me, dated the 2nd of November, that spoke about a pilot project that wanted to make 10% of ATMs in the country calibrated to dispense only 100 rupee notes. I'm guessing that perhaps this was also in anticipation of the demonetization announcement. There has been a suggestion in sections of the media that the banks ignored this, that perhaps if there were these 100 rupee only ATMs that were put in place, then there may not have been as much panic as there is right now, or as much sort of rush for lower currency notes. How do you see this RBI order of 100 rupee denomination notes only?
So whatever the RBI ordered was done. So there are in every district, you know, a few ATMs that are only calibrated for 100 rupee notes. As you can understand, what was being served by 2 lakh, if it suddenly gets served only by 20,000, it doesn't make all that much of a impact. And I don't think there was an outer date given regarding by what time this needed to be done. It was stated that this is merely as a pilot to see, you know, if this could take care of people's requirements for lower denomination notes. I know that we did one in every single district, but that is not enough, you know, when you are actually having an ATM network of 2 lakhs, if you are not able to do the majority of the same, then it becomes very difficult. And again, the RBI couldn't have asked to do a majority because they wanted obviously that 500 and 2000 also should get dispensed from the ATM. And every time you do a recalibration, you do need a lot of lead time in order to get it done.
But is there enough change in the system? I know that all of you have said there's enough cash in the system, but I'm using the word change because the 2000 rupee currency notes were printed first. A lot of people say, okay, I take my 2000 rupees, but when I go to buy something with it, if my shopkeeper, my vendor does not have change to give back to me, what do I do with that 2000 rupee note?
No, I think there is enough change in the system. I think there has been a bit of a hoarding of change also in the last few days because people were unsure, and that's why whatever we have given out has also really not been used. People have still sat with the 100 rupee notes instead of putting it back in the system. We are repeatedly telling people through people like you, through the media, that there is no need to worry. Please use the 100 rupee notes that you have got. There is much more in the system. So I don't think there is any shortage of 100 rupees. It's a question of people not using them for some fear that there may not be enough. That's not the case at all.
That's a very important point. Stop hoarding, spend your 100 rupee notes is what the SBI chief is saying. But ma'am, I want you to explain something that is being hotly debated at least in the political space, which is what's being called the sudden surge in deposits in the financial quarter between July and September. In September particularly, RBI data shows that there was nearly 6 lakh crore deposits in banks, and this compares to about 1.99 for the same period last year, which was the highest spike last year. So 6 lakh crores nearly of deposits, a spike in these deposits taking it to an all-time high of 102.08 lakh crores. Now the opposition is saying this means there was foreknowledge, otherwise why were these deposits? The government is saying this is the 7th pay commission payout, this is also the IDS scheme. How do you explain this surge, the spike in deposits in the months before the demonetization announcement?
Actually, this is this is not something that I have analyzed very closely myself, but I can tell you that there was the 7th pay commission, there was the 1 rank 1 pay, so there were bulky payments that came in during that period of time. Also, just before the 7th pay commission was the Ganpati festival season, at which point of time there is always a little dip in the deposits. So after the dip again you see the rise, so therefore the rise appears to be much more than what would have been in a normalized scenario. But I think it is mainly because of these two things. However, I have not really gone into any very great deep analysis of this. Frankly, I am too busy trying to ensure that everybody gets cash and everybody gets serviced. I have really not had the time to sit back and analyze these numbers.
You've not been a fan of the UPI app, the Unified Payment Interface. It was a big favorite of the ex-RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan. There are opposition parties today saying, why couldn't the UPI be used as the push for a cashless economy or to go digital, as you've been calling it? The SBI was a bit late, in fact, to join the UPI program. Talk a little bit about why the Unified Payment Interface app was not a solution to going digital, in your opinion.
No, in my opinion, when the UPI was actually put in, there was very little clarity on to who would do the grievance redressal and who would take the responsibility for the reconciliation. You must understand, at the end of the day, we have the maximum number of accounts in the system, and there would be people who would be accessing our accounts through the UPI. Now, if that particular entry doesn't go through and there is a grievance, my customer will come to me, but I won't know who to turn to, because the person who has drawn it might be another agency, the app he is using might be a third agency. who on earth will do the grievance redressal? And I have no way of knowing where it has gone wrong. So I think we were very responsible about this. We said that you need to put in a process. The person who's originating it must take responsibility for the completion and must do the grievance redressal. It should not be left on me, who's the account holder, to do everything, because at the end of the day the customer only knows the account and the bank in which he or she has the account. So I couldn't possibly be doing the reconciliation for the entire industry just because they are accessing my accounts. So I think, you know, these were genuine concerns, and in India, if you are aware, there are issues on the communication bandwidth, on the networking issues. So where there are always fluctuations, calls drop, so also transactions would drop. So there are a lot of concerns on these matters.
Yeah.
These are the things that we flagged, and because of which we delayed our entry. However, as I said, we are in UPI from last week, and we are already doing more transactions than probably the rest of the system put together.
But may I just push you a little bit, because you know you've spoken about how you expect normality in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The Prime Minister has in fact asked for 50 days. There are opposition parties like the Aam Aadmi Party. Meera Sanyal, who's been a banker herself, she gives out a number saying that that you would need to print 50 crores, I'm not talking about the value, but the numerical, the numbers, the volume, 50 crore notes every day and even then you would not be able to meet this 50-day deadline. Could you get a little bit into the specifics of how long it would take to actually print these notes to restore complete normality to the system?
No, the idea is every single note was being used in the system, and there was nothing that was sort of, you know, sitting on the side. I don't think that idea, first of all, is correct. There is a lot of notes that are coming out, people were hoarding it. It may be small savers, it need not always be large savers. But even we know housewives were hoarding amounts. There were very many people who were keeping the money, it was not in the system. And therefore, every single thing that comes in need not go out. As I told you, even today, 86,000 crores have been deposited, and only about 10,000 crores in net has been actually taken out. So not all of it needs to be replaced immediately. The second thing is that we will see a uptake in digital transactions. So I already have 300, 400 corporates lined up for taking various digital products so that they don't have to rely on cash. There are simple things like what are called impressed cards. The railways uses it for the railway, the station managers. They don't use cash anymore. These are cards that are reloaded on a regular basis, and you use it, and whenever the balance goes down below a certain level, the Railways Authority automatically uses it.
Right.
For instance, I had an academic institution which was asking for money. So I asked them, what do you use the cash for? They said, we need to give it to our drivers in order to buy petrol. Now we have sold them prepaid cards, because with that card, you can load 5,000 and give it to your drivers. They are not going to use more than 5,000 rupees of petrol, say per week or per whatever is the time.
Yeah.
They go and use it. End of the week, you reload it and they deposit the bills. It all becomes so much more easy and safer. And, you know, all of it becomes less risky. So
Okay.
there are ways and ways which we will ensure that more digital replaces the cash.
Now, but I do want to ask you, this deposits that you're getting, 86,000 crores in SBI alone, what happens to this money? This money then is used by the banks to lend, this money then belongs to the customer, because one of the things, ma'am, we do not know now is how much money is actually maybe black money coming back into the banks and how much of it is legit money.
See, whatever comes into the banks has become legit. Okay. So this is a money that belongs to the depositor who has deposited it with us.
Right.
As long as it is with us, we are bound to repay it to him when he needs it or when he demands it. Until such time as it is in the bank, we have to, you know, take care of it, in the sense that if he has put it in a fixed deposit, I pay fixed deposit interest. If he has put it in a savings, I do that. If he has put it in a current, then whatever are the facilities for that current account holder, I have to do all of that. So whatever money has come in, this is all in the formal banking channel. It belongs to the depositors. As long as it is with me, I will utilize it to generate more productive activity so that I am in a position to earn the interest to pay back to the depositor.
So this belongs to the depositor and helps the bank lend. This is the property
Yes.
of the customer and the bank, basically.
That's
Nothing,
That's right.
nothing passed on to the
That's
government. It remains within the bank, but it's not going to be.
No.
It's not going to be used to deal with your bad loans, not with the NPAs, none of that.
Oh no way, no way. This is simply the depositor's money.
But I do have to ask you about the bad loans, and I ask you this because sometimes there's a perception among people that while the tax-paying classes of India, you know, which is only about 3% or less, are facing the pressure, are facing the heat, the big fish are getting away. And you know, there's been ongoing debate of the 57 tax evaders who owe banks 85,000 crores in bad loans. The Supreme Court has to decide whether the RBI should make that list public or not. The SBI's own 11,700 crores is locked in as bad loans. How do you answer the public perception that these big corporates, the big daddies, the Vijay Mallya's of the world, whom you've been locked in a battle with to try and get back your money, these guys are the ones who are going to get away? As one person said to me, Amir log to kabhi line mein dikhte nahi. So how do you address this perception, ma'am, today that the big daddies, the sugar daddies of the corporate world who owe masses of money to the banks, they're going to get away, while it's the ordinary Indian who will face the hardship?
No, I don't think, you should put it quite like that. Frankly speaking, at the end of the day, if India did not get the infrastructure, if large projects had not been put in, whatever little you see in India in the way of productivity would not have increased or would not have happened. Your GDP growth happened because roads were laid, because airports were built, because ports were built, so because core industries came up. A lot of our people, they got jobs because all of these things happened. Now, I am not saying that there are not all of these people are not totally okay, and none of them are tax evaders. I am not saying anything of the sort. If they are tax evaders, then it is the Indian Revenue Service or whatever we have over here, the Revenue Service. They are the ones who should look at them and catch them. In respect of the projects themselves, while yes, some of the projects suffered because of bad management or bad calls taken by the promoters, but many of them also suffered because the ecosystem did not give the kind of support that was promised in the initial phases. Roads were bid out without land being acquired. Environmental clearances given were taken back. Mines that were allocated were cancelled. Now projects are built on certain assumptions. If in the middle of the game suddenly the rules of the game change, then the projects are likely to flounder and become what are called stalled projects. So obviously, everybody needs to understand that it is something that is much deeper than merely blaming a handful of people.
Right.
The handful of people as such, what they have done with their money, etc., that is for the government to ask. But as far as the projects are concerned, these projects were conceived on certain assumptions. Many of these assumptions didn't come correct. The fault could be anybody's. It is also a fact that India, for the first time, had a real infrastructure boom. So to that extent, we ourselves were learning how to fund infrastructure. And maybe we made a lot of mistakes. We funded 30-year projects requesting that the payment be made in 7.5 years. How does it happen? So, all of us made mistakes. We have learned from the mistakes. Going forward, we will expect to do better. But having said that, we still today have some world-class infrastructure. So whether they be the airports that you are seeing, whether they be the ports that you are seeing, some of the roads that have been laid down, some of the other infrastructure that has come, including core industry, it is all part of the investment that we made in the 2009 to 2011.
Ma'am, in the end, what would you want to say to people who want to withdraw more cash, right? Because, like, for example, there's a big fat wedding of a mining baron happening in Karnataka, which is estimated to cost somewhere hundreds of crores. But on the other hand, there are men and women standing in line saying, "Hamara beti ka shadi ho raha hai, we need more cash," and so on. This cash rationing, as people are calling it, on their own hard-earned income. How do you respond to this cash rationing, especially with this indelible ink for swaps?
See, cash rationing, our idea is that if you already have an account, in all probability you have an ATM card. So in most places you can swipe it on the POS and get whatever services you want.
Right.
Because majority of merchants today have POS machines. Yes, they don't have it in the vegetable markets, they don't have it with the fishmongers, but there, frankly speaking, even if you give them 2,000, they have enough small change to be able to give you change. Regarding the big hefty payments that you are making, Why should you not make it by check?
Yeah.
Why can you not transmit it into their accounts? Do you mean to say that these caterers who are catering these weddings, even if it is a small wedding, they don't have an account?
Yeah.
And if there is an account, why can't I do an account-to-account transfer? If they have issues on doing it, we are open. Please come to us. We will handhold as to how this is to be done. Come with the account numbers of all the service providers of your wedding, and we will enable you to transfer all of this money. It will be in the service provider's account within seconds. It is important for us to do this because this is the only way you can stop unaccounted wealth in the economy.
Well, those are strong words, ma'am. Arundhati Bhattacharya, SBI chief. A tough time for you. Banking employees really working round the clock and real heroes and heroines of this moment. Thank you so much in the midst of that, that madness and that busy time for sharing your time. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.